Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone to our physiology discussion. Today's discussion basically on cardiovascular system 1, the anatomical structure of heart and the blood flow through the heart. Firstly, the heart is a hollow muscular organ situated middle mediastinum of our thoracic cavity. The heart has 4 basic chambers, 2 upper chambers and 2 lower chambers. The upper 2 chambers are called the atrium and the lower 2 chambers are called the ventricle. Now, look at that. In case of my heart, this is my left side and this is my right side. So, don't get mixed up. This is left side and this is right side. Now, look at the bottom chambers, that means ventricle of the heart. 2 ventricles, one there, one there. This is the right ventricle. This is the left ventricle. The left ventricle has a thick muscular wall and the right ventricle has a thin muscular wall. That means it has a thick muscular wall and the right ventricle has a thin muscular wall. So look at the diameter, thick and this is thin. The reason behind it's thick and thin. The left ventricle has a thick muscular wall because the left ventricle pumps the blood all over the body. That means head and neck, upper limb, lower limb, abdomen, all over the body. So it has to generate a high pumping pressure. In case of high pumping pressure, it has thick muscular wall. That the muscular wall helps to generate high pumping pressure. But in case of right ventricle, it has a thin muscular wall because it pumps the blood just into the lungs. Look at the destination of 2 lungs from the heart, just very close. So it has to generate a simple or low pumping pressure. So it has the thin muscular wall. Now, for the additional chamber, this additional chambers, upper chambers. Now look at the left ventricle. This ventricle has 2 valves. One valve up the way and one valve down the way. This valve up the way and this valve down the way. And this valve got the aorta and this valve connected with the upper chambers. So look at the upper chambers here. The upper chambers has thin muscular wall than the lower chambers, that means left ventricle. So it is the thin muscular wall. In the upper chambers, 4 blood vessels are drained. That means 4 blood vessels. 2 are prominent here and 2 are indirectly. Here is the blood vessels. These vessels are called pulmonary vein. These vessels called pulmonary pulmonary vein. In the basic terminology, look at that, the difference between the artery and the vein. Here, artery and vein, the blood vessels that carry out the blood towards the heart, these are called the vein. That means this is the vein that carry out the blood towards the heart. So this is called vein, and this vessel is called the pulmonary vein because it carry out the blood from the lungs. Here the pulmonary is related to lungs in case of Latin language. So it carries the blood from the lungs to the heart. It is called the pulmonary vein. And in case of artery, the blood vessels that carry out the blood out of the lungs to the other parts of the body. So this is called the artery. Now look at that. This valve here got the aorta. Here it is called the aortic valve. This valve is look like semi-moon. This type semi-moon or moon, semi-moon look like that, and this is called the semi-lunar valve. Semi-lunar valve. Because it goes the aorta, because of this got the aorta, this is called the also aortic valve. Aortic valve. This is the aortic valve. Now this valve here between the left atrium and the left ventricle, it's called the left atrioventricular valve. Atrioventricular valve. Atrioventricular valve. This valve has two cusps. Here, two cusps. One cusp look like that, one cusp, and look like that. Two cusps. Two cusps. So it is called the bicuspid valve. Bicuspid valve. Bicuspid valve. So this is the bicuspid valve and this is the aortic valve. Now look at that. Right ventricle. In the right ventricle there are also two valves. One valve up the way and one valve down the way. This valve here of the way is got the large vessels and it's bifurcate into two branches. This large vessels is called the pulmonary artery. Look at that. This is called the pulmonary artery, and a pulmonary artery has two branches. In case of left-sided lungs, it is called the left pulmonary artery, and this is the right pulmonary artery. So these are the left branch, right branch, and this is the pulmonary artery. Look at that. Pulmonary is related with lungs, and artery, the blood vessels that carry out the blood out of the heart. So it carries the blood out of the heart to the lungs. And this valve here is called the pulmonary arterial valve. That means pulmonary valve. Pulmonary valve. And these valves there between the upper chambers and lower chambers, that means right ventricle and the upper chamber, right atrium. So firstly complete the right atrium, then we have to discuss about this valve. Hold it please. Then we have to discuss the upper chamber, that means the right atrium. In the right atrium, it has also the thin muscular wall, but in the right atrium, two large vessels are drained. Here the two large vessels. Now look at that. The vessels from the upwards and these vessels from the downwards. So in case of upwards, it's called the superior, and in case of downwards, it's called the inferior. And both of these vessels are actually vena cava, that it's carry out the blood towards the lungs, that means into the lungs. These are called the vena cava. So in case of this, it is called the superior vena cava, and this is called the inferior vena cava. Now complete the right atrium. Now these valves between the right atrium and right ventricle. This is the right atrium, this is the left atrium. These valves are between the right atrium and right ventricle. It's called the right atrioventricular valve. That means it is called so atrioventricular valve. Look at that. The valve has three cusps. That means 1, 2, 3. Look at that. This is one cusp, two cusp, and one cusp lower. Three cusps. The valves have three cusps. So it is called the tricuspid valve because it has the three cusps. It is called the tricuspid valve. So this is the tricuspid valve. This is the pulmonary valve. This is the aortic valve. This is the bicuspid valve. Now look at that. This valve has three cusps. It is called the tricuspid valve. But here the pulmonary valves, this pulmonary valves and the aortic valve also has three cusps, but is particularly named as aortic valve, and this is called the pulmonary valve. Here now, look at the blood flow through the heart. The oxygenated blood from the lungs drained into this left atrium. So it is the chamber of oxygenated blood which comes from both lungs. So this is the pulmonary vein which carry out the blood from the lungs to the hearts. In case of this side, that means left-sided lungs, there are two pulmonary veins. This is the two pulmonary veins, and in case of right-sided lungs, there are also two pulmonary veins. These four pulmonary veins carry out the blood, oxygenated blood, to the left atrium. Now, here the chambers of oxygenated blood. These vessels, oxygen blood. Now, the oxygenated blood from the left atrium comes to the left ventricle through this bicuspid valve. This bicuspid valve. Here, now it is the oxygenated chamber. Now, if the ventricle systole, the blood goes to the aorta. Ventricular systole, the blood goes to the aorta through this aortic valves. Here the aortic valve. Now the blood goes to the aorta, And the aorta has three branches, one branch here, one branch here, and one branch here. This is the one branch, one branch, one branch. This is called the brachiocephalic trunk, and this is called the left common carotid artery, and this is called the subclavian artery. These three branches carry out the oxygenated blood to the upper part of the body, and the branch of aorta, which down the way it carry out the blood, is the lower part of the body. Now look at that. In case of right side, the venous blood from the upper part receives the vena cava. That means venous blood from upper part receives the superior vena cava, and the venous blood from the lower part receives the inferior vena cava. Both of these great vessels, that means both vena cava, superior and inferior, drained into this right atrium. So this is the chamber of venous blood. Now the venous blood from the right atrium goes to the right ventricle through this tricuspid valve. Here, this tricuspid valve. Now during the ventricular systole, the carbon dioxide with blood, that means venous blood, goes to the pulmonary artery. Here, through the pulmonary valve. Here the pulmonary valve, and the venous blood from the pulmonary artery is bifurcate and goes to the two lungs by the left pulmonary artery in case of left lungs, and this right pulmonary artery in case of right lungs. This is the left pulmonary artery, and this is the right pulmonary artery. It carries the blood to the lungs. So this is the whole process, that the blood flow. Now look at that. The valves here, bicuspid valves, and here tricuspid valves. Now we are going to discuss about the regulation of these valves. What are they regulate? That means actually blood flow mainly dependent on these four valves. Now we are going to discuss about the regulation of blood flow through the bicuspid and tricuspid valve. These valves are regulated actually by specialized muscles. Here the two cusps. So there are two specialized muscles in the wall. And these muscles are called the papillary muscles. So it is the papillary muscles, and these cusps are connected to the papillary muscles by the tendonic cords. In case of Latin name, this is called the cordi tendoni. So this is connected with these muscles, and this connected with these muscles. Look at that. These are called the tendonic cords or cordi tendoni. Cordi tendoni, and this is the papillary muscles. This is called the papillary muscles. In case of right ventricle, here the three cusps. So the valves are regulated by three types of muscles. That means papillary muscles, three types. anterior, posterior and septal papillary muscles. This and this. These are called the papillary muscles, and these are connected with the cusp by the tendoni cords or cordi tendoni. This is the cordi tendoni. And this. So this is the cordi tendoni and this is the papillary muscles. Now look at that, the covering of heart, that means the heart is covered by a fibrous sac, which is made of actually fibrous tissue. That means this is the fibrous sac, look like that, fibrous sac covering all parts of the heart. This sac provides a physical protection to the heart and maintains the heart to get over expand. The heart simply expand, but it maintains and prevents the heart to get over expand. And this fibrous sac are called the pericardium. Pericardium. Look at that. Peri means the parameter, that means any kinds of covering, and cardium is related to the heart. So pericardium is actually the covering of heart. Now look at that, the wall of this heart. This is the wall of this heart. There are 3 layers in the wall of this heart. The outer layer is called the epicardium. This outer layer is called the epicardium. It's called epicardium. Look at that, the epi is related to the outer part and cardium is related to the heart. So outer layer of the heart is called the epicardium. This is number 1, outer layers. And the inner layer, that means the inner layer is covered with actually smooth endothelium. Here the inner layers is covered with smooth endothelium cells. Here the smooth, which controlate the smooth blood flow. This is the smooth endothelium cell. So the inner layers is called the endocardium. Inner layers is called the endocardium. Look at that, endo is connected with inner and cardium is connected with the heart. The inner layer, so the inner layer is made up with the smooth squamous endothelium cell. Here the middle layer of the heart, look at that, the middle layer, this middle layer is made up of specialized muscles that are called the cardiac muscles. Here the cardiac muscles, lots of cardiac muscles. It is the middle layer. Here the wall of right ventricle, the wall of right atrium, the wall of left atrium. These are the cardiac muscles. These are called the cardiac muscles. And this layer is called myocardium. Myocardium. Myo means it related with the muscles, and cardium is related with the heart. So this is the muscles layer. It's called the myocardium. That's with middle layers of the heart is called myocardium. So this is the wall of this heart. That means 3 layers. Last, look at that. This structure which separates the both parts, that means left part and this is the right part. This structure separates. In anatomical discussion, the structure which separates 2 parts is called the septum. It's called the septum. This structure separates the heart, so it is called the cardiac septum. Cardiac septum. So this is the cardiac septum. In case of atrium, this is the atrial septum and this is the ventricular septum. So this is the whole of this anatomical structure and the blood flow through the heart. Thank you everyone. Assalamu alaikum.